Hi there. I'm glad to be well and healthy again and be able to make this video for you guys. I apologize for being a little bit late, but nonetheless, hopefully you're viewing this. And one of the things we learned about in week 3 was this idea of decision making and how to enhance that process. And there was a great book that was written several years ago called Decision Making God's Way by Gary Meadors. And interestingly enough, he lives in Grand Rapids and got to take the a course from him on that. And here's one of the things that he shared, and I really would like to offer this for you. Maybe it'll be a blessing for you. And so check this out. One of the things he talks about in this book is that you start off with the decision, and you have to ask yourself some very simple, basic questions like, when you want to make a decision and do it God's way, you want to do it in a way that is biblically appropriate and that honors his will and his desires, that you'd have to ask yourself, is the decision that I'm having to make covered by a clear command? In other words, is there a verse in the Bible that says, do this or do not do this? Okay. And if the answer is yes, then the decision is fairly easy. Technically, it's obey. Okay. Now, I know that we're all fallen, we're all sinful, we make stupid choices and we do not obey. But this is how the decision would start: is if there's a clear command, then yes, obey. That's easy as far as knowing what is the right choice to make. However, maybe you're not sure. Maybe you might just sit back and go, I know the Bible, or maybe I don't know the Bible, but maybe you do, but you recognize you don't know all of it. That there's a lot of verses in there and a lot of books and a lot of chapters, and that there could be a command or a discussion somewhere that does actually offer insight for the decision I need to make, but I just don't know it's there. I'm just not sure. Or maybe, like I said before, you don't know the Bible that well. You're just like, I really don't know. So then what you would need to do is to study and clarify. Now, the whole Bible is profitable for correction, rebuke, and training in righteousness, right? 2 Timothy 3:16. However, there's a lot of Bible. Where do you start? Now, I could be a pompous, pious potlicker and say, start at Genesis 1:1 and read through the whole thing. And that is true and should be done. However, a lot of times decisions we have to make don't offer that type of time, right? You're stuck. Like you got to make a choice, and you got, let's say, a week to make it in, or a day to make it in, or whatever the case is, and you're really struggling with it, and you don't have the time to read the entire Bible, right? So here's a couple of chapters that are good to start with: Romans chapters 12 through 14, 1 Corinthians chapters 8 through 10. These cover a variety of issues in life. Generically speaking, they cover employment, being an employee, being a boss, being a parent, being a husband or a wife, being a neighbor or a friend. So there's a lot of discussion within these simple chapters that can at least be like a broad stroke to cover real quick. Outside of that, yes, the whole Bible is worth a read to make sure all of how God has expected his people to behave, and why, and we can really assess a lot from that. But these are good chapters to start with. So from that, you can then draw a conclusion. And if from reading those chapters, you decide to say, this really did speak to my dilemma, to my decision-making process, and I do see a teaching here that is related. And if that's the case, then obey the teachings of Scripture. You're good to go. However, let's make this more complicated. What if the answer is no? What if there is nothing in the Bible about that decision? Maybe you're left with a choice of, man, I got 2 job offers. Which one do I take? And neither one of them is an immoral job, okay? Or maybe you're left with trying to choose between, do I go left or do I go right? And neither one is sinful. Therefore, what do I do? Okay, and you could be left with that type of a situation. A job offers you a promotion. Do you take it? Okay, I got accepted by 2 universities for a master's program. Which one do I choose? Okay, so you could be left with some really complicated decisions, to which there is not a verse that says, thou shalt taketh thy classes at this university at all costs. Like, there's no verse that says that, right? So then you're left with no. Okay, you've read the Bible, you've read these chapters, you looked it over. The answer is no. The Bible doesn't speak to this, okay? Because the Bible does not speak to every single facet of every single moment of life, right? It doesn't tell you how to fix a car. It doesn't tell you how to work on a carburetor. It doesn't tell you how to tie your shoes, right? It doesn't cover everything in life. And so, what do you do at this point? Therefore, at this point, what we need to do is prayerfully process all the data that we have through a biblical worldview and value set. Now, I know that might seem like a loaded sentence and easier said than done, which is true. Here's some help. Okay, you start looking at human obligations. Okay, maybe if you were to get offered a promotion, but that promotion would take away more time you get to spend with your family. Maybe you'd be traveling more. Maybe you would be out of the state more, out of the country more, and that you wouldn't see your kids grow up and you wouldn't be there with your spouse. And so you could find yourself maybe at conflict with your human obligation. Maybe there is something within it that would help you no longer be able to attend worship services at all, and you would never be able to go to church again. Whatever the case is, that you would have to look through your human obligations. You could seek the counsel of informed people, not just anyone, but people who are you would consider wise, wise in the ways of the Lord, kingdomly wise, scripturally wise, that they're just wise people. Uh, Deal research on some of the issues that you're dealing with on your decisions. And so when you go through all of these together, you weigh out the obligations, you weigh out your kingdom obligations, you weigh out your own desires, you weigh out all the counsel from informed people, wise friends, you've researched it, you've tried to gain theological understanding, all of this done prayerfully, okay, seeking God's face, telling him you don't want to make a fool of him, you don't want to dishonor him, you don't want to be taken away from him, you want to be able to stay true, you don't want to get distracted. Please, God, give me the wisdom to make the best choices here. And as you're going through all of this, at some point, you will have to evaluate your options and then make a decision. Ultimately, we got to make decisions. We can't just sit in limbo and then hope that as we make the best decisions we can make with the information provided to us at that time, if we had God's will in mind, honestly and sincerely, even if we screw it up, it is amazing how from all those thorns, God is able to grow roses and can help us through it. And so we don't have to be paralyzed in fear of making bad choices as long as we're trying to follow this type of a process. That even when we still screw it up, man, God's going to be there with his grace and he's going to help us through whatever ends up happening. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you and I hope that you are encouraged from it. Have yourself a great week.